the people of sake actually brought me into sake.
Back in 1988, this place was actually in Ginza on the main drag.
At first it was kind of soy sauce, it was miso.
To the point where it actually changed my life.
New Year's Day 1989.
Not just sake as a beverage, but all the culture and history.
Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sake on Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to expanding the dialogue surrounding Japan's iconic beverages of sake and shochu, and of course, awamori. The show is made possible with the support of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association, and while we usually like to record in the JSS Info Center in Toranomon, today we're recording over Zoom. My name is Frank, and today I'm with Liam McNulty of nominication.jp to talk shochu and spirits. So, Liam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, I started nominication.jp in 2016. Sort of the original reasoning behind that was that there was not at the time a sort of dedicated resource towards Japanese spirits and also brewed beverage as well. There was not really a really dedicated resource for that online. So I started the website in 2016, and sort of from there, it has kind of expanded into more distilled side of that, which is to say, I think that a lot of the visitors to my website are very focused on Japanese whiskey. But at the same time, me personally, I look at Japanese, the beverage whiskey as a whole, which is to say that also includes, shochu, obviously, awamori as well. That also includes, say, gin or, brandy as well.
How did you get into spirits in the first place?
Well, so to give you the full story, I came to Japan in 2008, and realistically, well, I don't know if it's a good thing to say, but I didn't really have many friends. So I didn't have many friends, so I kind of went out to a lot of bars, just by myself. And at some point, I kind of came upon this entire culture of, say, cocktails and spirits in Japan. It kind of dawned upon me that there's not really anybody that knows what's actually going on in Japan. There were actually not many people writing about it. There were not many people, obviously, podcasting about it. We're talking about 2008, so this is kind of before the time of YouTube and all that. I felt like there was kind of a gap between what people thought that was actually going on in Japan versus what was really happening here on the ground. And so that's kind of the reason that I started the website, is because that I kind of wanted to bridge the gap between sort of what people thought was happening here versus what's actually happening here.
Gotcha. Yeah, because 2008 is before, the whiskey boom. Sake is kind of still.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's before, a lot of people really realize that, Japan is kind of a place for good spirits, good drinks. I mean, this is kind of before that people had kind of woken up to sort of the reality of Japanese drinks.
What kind of cocktails? Were you based in Tokyo when you first came?
Yeah, and so absolutely. And so, we're talking about 2008, 2009. To give you the full story, one of the reasons I got into Japanese whiskey to begin with is because of Yamazaki 18. All right. And at the time, Yamazaki 18, that was 4,000 yen for a shot of that.
Okay.
All right. 4,000 yen for a shot of that at a bar in Tokyo. And that Yamazaki 18 really kind of set a lot of things in motion for me, is because I felt like the rest of the world really did not know how good Yamazaki 18 really was. And so, I went to the Hakushu distillery, I think the first time in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And, I had fantastic, absolutely fantastic, Mizunara aged, whatever, Yamazaki something, and, or Hakushu something. And, it kind of blew my mind. And it really occurred to me that, a lot of people don't know what the hell, they don't know what's going on here. And so even at the time, I spoke fairly decent Japanese because, I studied Japanese in high school. So it really kind of stuck out to me that there was kind of this gap between what people thought what they knew about Japan versus what was actually happening.
Mm-hmm. And that's that kind of encouraged you to kind of be the
Exactly, and that was the kind of impetus to start the website, was because that, I kind of wanted to have a dedicated resource to Japanese drinks, Japanese spirits. Is that there was, I mean, yeah, you had some articles like whatever, top 10 bars in Japan, or whatever, top 5 Japanese drinks you should have, or something like that. There was, I mean, there's some like one-offs, but there was nothing like actually dedicated to a specifically. There was nothing dedicated to Japanese drinks at the time.
Would you say that it's changed now? Do you feel like you're one of many, or?
Well, no. I think that there's a few other websites now, and I think that the rise of social media, because when I started my website, 2016, social media, yeah, it existed, but it wasn't necessarily where it is in place today. So now there's a few YouTube channels, there's Instagrammers, there's all kinds of things, but in terms of like the independent kind of resources, I look at Stefan, like, so Stefan Van Aken started, Nonjata. He started that like 10 years before probably I started Dominication. So I kind of look at Stefan as sort of the father of sort of this impetus to start to talk about Japanese whiskey. Well, I don't know if he necessarily agree with this term, but I kind of took up the I kind of took up the torch from him.
Okay.
But in any case, but I didn't do that on social media. I did that on my own website. It's independent. So I haven't necessarily relied on, social media channels at all.
Gotcha. Cool. That's difficult. That's got to be difficult to get people to show up. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, I mean, that's kind of where I started from. So I don't. Yeah, I'm a little bit platform agnostic, and you could say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess today we're here to talk mostly shochu. But if you could give us a quick reminder of what shochu is for our audience. Sake Owner definitely has a lot of people who like sake. Some people like shochu. So just what is shochu, and how is it different from like other distilled beverages?
Absolutely. So shochu is sort of the national distilled beverage of Japan, which is to say that it's got a long history, over 500 years. There's a little bit of a murkiness associated with exactly how shochu came to Japan. Some people say it came from Okinawa. Some people say it came from, Kyushu directly. But in any case, the reality is that, the first record of shochu goes back to 17th century. So basically it's the distilled spirit of Japan. But I think that one of the things that really struck out to me about shochu is the fact that, yes, it does exactly, as you mentioned, use koji, right? When you think about shochu, it starts its life sort of as a sake, actually. Because basically, you talk about the ichiji shikomi, right? Which is like to say the first distillation batch, basically where you put the koji on the rice to basically grow the culture, right? You grow the culture of the koji on the shochu, and you grow it on the rice. Whether we're talking about, imo shochu, whether we're talking about sweet potato shochu or mugi shochu or any shochu really, realistically it starts its life as a sake. Because it's sort of the same process. Once you have your sort of koji culture grown, then you move on to the next step, which is, say, you add, say, potatoes, or you add, say, barley, or you add, say, kokuto, table brown sugar. And so it originally starts its life as sort of a sake, essentially. From there, okay, you take it to the next level. Then you say you take this, mixture, and then you're going to put it into a pot still. And so as a result of that, one of the big differences between say shochu and the spirits of the rest of the world is that shochu typically is going to be distilled only once.
Is that unusual?
It is, because I think that if you look at most spirits worldwide, it's going to be at least 2 or 3 times. I mean, yeah, there's some exceptions. You get, Britain and, Ireland, and, so there are some other exceptions, but distilled drinks worldwide typically is going to be at least 2 times. But shochu, it's only once.
Is that true for stuff in Japan, like Japanese whiskey and stuff?
No, Japanese whiskey is going to be following the kind of scotch process, which is to say it's at least 2 times.
Oh, really? So shochu is kind of very special in that way.
It is, and even if you look at, if you look at distilled spirits worldwide, if you distill it once, you're going to have too much flavor left over. You're going to have too much congeners left over, and so, but one of the things that strikes out to me about shochu is that you specifically want that to be there. That's kind of the point of shochu, is that you want to have these kind of underlying ingredients. You want to have that specific flavor profile, say your, sweet potato, or you want to have that kind of underlying profile of your, barley or your rice, something like that.
Wait, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So, like, normally, if you're making a distilled beverage out that's not shochu, you don't want any flavor, or most
No, no,
flavor gone.
let's not get it wrong. All right, so let's say, for example, you're making a whiskey. You want the barley to exist to some point, right? To some extent.
Okay.
Which is to say, in the case of whiskey, you're generally going to distill 2 times for a Scotch or a Japanese. But in the case of shochu, you absolutely want that profile to be there very, very forward.
So the distilling process removes some stuff, and the more you do it, the more is removed?
Well, and we can take it a step further, is because realistically, if you look at shochu distillation, like the actual distillation process, a lot of these distillers are using vacuum distillation, which is to say that they can lower the boiling point of alcohol that comes off the still, which is to say that they leave more congeners in the original ingredients, which gives it a richer flavor of the original ingredients.
Interesting. And that would not be desirable for other distilled beverages, potentially.
Well, the problem is if we're talking about whiskey, vacuum distillation of whiskey is not really a thing, because typically in whiskey you're going to want the spirit to contact copper, and in vacuum distillation we're talking about stainless steel pot stills. Okay, that's good for shochu, but in whiskey you're talking about copper. You want to do vacuum distillation in copper? I'm sorry, it's gonna implode.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not thick enough.
Interesting. Huh. I did not know that. That's so shochu is really focused on getting like maximal flavor, but also being a distillate.
Well, let's just be a little bit more clear. I'm talking about honkaku shochu here.
Okay.
Kodoi shochu is a different kind of beast altogether. Kodoi shochu is like basically the kind of triple distilled, column distilled. That's a little bit closer to like a vodka. That's something that you're going to put in, say, a lemon chuhai or a hopi or something like that, right? Versus honkaku shochu, which is more about bringing out the best that the base ingredients have to offer.
But it's watered down, right?
So basically, when you get a typical honkaku shochu off the first pot still, it's going to be around 45-50%, which is legally beyond the limit for honkaku shochu. So typically in, say, Kyushu, Kagoshima, they're going to water it down to 25. But if you go over to the next prefecture, Miyazaki, they're going to water it down to 20. Just a little bit of a different culture there. But in any case, they're going to water it down a little bit, because basically the law dictates that shochu has to be under, I think, 45%.
Are there shochus that are sold at 45%?
Once you get past that, you can no longer legally sell it as a shochu. It has to be a speeded suit.
Oh.
In terms of like the National Tax Agency definition, yes.
Mm-hmm. Is that too much flavor, basically? Like from a consumer or like a drinker perspective, is that why you would water it down? Is because it's so much flavor compared to like a quote unquote normal or non-shochu style spirit?
It's a difficult question, because once you get to like 45% ABV, we're talking about sort of like the heads of a distill run on a shochu still, right? And we talk about heads, yes, that is very intensive flavor.
Okay.
Which is more than probably your average honkaku shochu drinker would want, probably. I mean, people like us that are, involved in the spirits industry, yeah, maybe that's the kind of thing we prefer. But I think your average, kind of honkaku shochu drinker is probably not going to want something that, started its life as whatever, 45% ABV, shochu, right?
Do they mix the heads with like the middle and the tails?
Yeah, typically that's what you do. Because realistically, you're going to have to throw out a lot of like the kind of flavor giving profile, because the heads realistically is where you get a lot of flavor out of any distillation. I mean, that's not specific to shochu. I mean, that's the case with gin. That's the case with whiskey. That's the case with realistically a lot of distilled beverages. And so that's where you get so much of the flavor to begin with. And yeah, it also is the highest ABV, which is to say that, you know, a lot of these shochu distilleries, they don't want to throw away their heads. So I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of hanatade. Hanatade basically is like the first kind of several drips that you get off the still.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's got so much more flavor to it. It's also got so much more ABV. I mean, hanatade typically is what, 60% ABV, somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did people save that, or?
Well, I mean, some distilleries, you know, sell it as a separate product.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
How much of a percentage of like the total distillation process would that be? Is it like 2%?
I mean, yeah. I mean, no. I mean, we're talking about heads. I mean, realistically, any distilled products. I mean, probably it's going to be, you know, 9 to 8%, I think.
Okay.
For your heads, and then the rest of it's going to be the hearts, and then obviously you got your tails as well. Tails tend to be kind of useless in terms of the distillation process, but yeah.
Huh. Interesting. But like, so this is a little bit of a slight topic away from the manufacturing process, but how did you get into shochu?
I mean, the reason I got into shochu is because when I came to Japan, I got into kind of all distilled drinks altogether. And so I originally started with whiskey. And obviously, you know, that's kind of what my website is about now. But at the same time, I felt like, look, I'm here in Japan. I can't ignore this entire, you know, category of distilled beverages. And so I started to kind of study more about shochu. And the more I learned about it, the more I learned that it's actually one of the most complex categories of distilled beverages in the world. Is because, you know, you can use so many different ingredients. You can use so many different styles of, you know, koji or you know, yeast. And then you can do what? Vacuum distillation. You can do atmospheric distillation. There's so many more kind of levers that you have with the shochu. And the more that I learned about the complexity about shochu, the more and more that I appreciate the category for what it has to offer versus, say, a whiskey or, say, a gin or, say, you know, a mezcal, whatever.
What are the rules for shochu? What, like, to make a honkaku shochu, what do you have to do?
So one of the things that is kind of a misconception is that honkaku shochu does not have to be single distilled.
Oh, really?
It has to be pot stilled, which is to say you cannot use a continuous still, but you can send it on the same pot still twice, and it is still a honkaku shochu. But there's also some rules about, you know, the resulting ABV. I think it has to be, I'd have to check, but I think it has under 45% ABV.
Fresh from the still or before you sell it to the consumer?
That's the bottling strength. And then there's a whole host of ingredients. And there's actually some really kind of crazy things in this list of ingredients. You can do cactus. You can do whey, like the byproduct of making cheese. There's all kinds of like kind of wild things that you can make shochu from.
Are there cactuses in Japan?
Yeah, well, it says sabuten. That's what the law says. So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
The law is actually quite liberal about exactly what you can call a honkaku shochu versus what you cannot call a honkaku shochu. But in any case, realistically, outside of the main categories, take, for example, tomorokoshi, like, okay, corn. A corn shochu, yes, you could make a shochu from 100% corn, in theory. But realistically, is it going to be a good shochu? Probably not. Most people that make corn shochu, by law, as long as it's, I don't remember the percentage, 5 or 10%, as long as it's like 10% corn, you could still call it honkaku, tomorokoshi shochu. But the rest of it, you can make it barley or potato, sweet potato, something like that.
Interesting. So it's almost like a lot of them are used as flavoring.
Yeah, and the problem, I mean, Frank, realistically, this is kind of a overarching issue with Japanese regulation as a whole. It's still the wild, wild west. The regulation here is quite low compared to other countries in the world, and shochu is the same situation.
I see.
And realistically, I think going forward, that's something that the industry as a whole probably needs to kind of close that gap.
Is there pressure from like distillers to close that gap, or are they kind of happy where it is?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think that there have been some kind of voices in the industry now to allow, specifically around the color regulations surrounding shochu. Because what happens is that if you were to age a shochu in a oak cask, for example, it's going to change color. And according to current Japanese law, once you age it past a certain point, once it gets past a certain point of color, you can no longer call it shochu. And so there are voices in the industry that say that, okay, well, realistically, we should still be able to call that shochu. But there's other voices in the industry that say that, I'm sorry, once you put it in a cask too long, it's not shochu anymore. So there's kind of a little bit of a conflict there, I think, between certain parties that say that once it gets to be past a certain coloration, can't call it shochu anymore. And the original reason for that is because the tax agency said that we can't tell the difference between that and, say, a brandy or a whiskey.
Oh. And the fear would be that you were calling a brandy or a whiskey a shochu.
Well, the fear is that you have to pay more tax on it. That's the fear. That's the fear. It's because shochu has a beneficial tax benefit up until 40%. Shochu can theoretically be less taxed than a, say, spirit or whiskey could be.
So if you could create something that's basically a whiskey but still be able to call it shochu, that's a tax. You're cheating the taxman. You would
be able to sell it for higher, and you would also be able to tax it for less. So yeah.
I see. Well, gotta give the NTA their due, I suppose.
Well, taxman, yeah, of course.
The National Tax Agency is the one who regulates what shochu is, right? Like sake?
Absolutely. And so if you look at the tax law now, basically they're going to say, korui shochu or otsurui shochu, which is to say, korui shochu is obviously kind of the continuous distilled stuff, and otsurui shochu is sort of the single distilled stuff, or hot distilled stuff, I should say. So yeah, they're kind of the ones that decided that, since, I don't know, 1960 something, if I remember correctly. But yeah, in any case, they're the ones that have decided these kind of categories, but taxation on those two categories isn't any different. It's just a matter of distinguishing, kind of the two products.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh. This kind of connects to another question that I want to ask you about, but is there like in sake, a national tasting event where all of the different distillers submit something, like the National Sake Kampyokai, to get
Yeah, but there is an organization that does sort of the scientific approach to tasting of shochu. These are the guys like in lab coats that show up from like the National Laboratory of something, right? So yeah, there is that does exist for shochu as well.
And is there like a style that everybody does, kind of the way that like, I feel like in sake you have this like specific style that uses Yamada Nishiki, a particular type of yeast, a particular type of ratio.
Nope. Nobody cares. Look.
Oh.
I mean, the thing is with shochu is that there's so many local shochu distilleries. Is that you've got people growing their own potatoes on their own farm. They're taking it super hyper local, and they're only producing whatever 100, 200, 300 bottles a year. Realistically, like that's what they're kind of satisfied with. Is they don't necessarily have any ambition to like expand overseas or anything like that. They're just happy being like a super duper craft producer of shochu, and they're going to take it to the next level in the sense that, they're going to tell you like, okay, well, this field right here, that's this bottle. Next field over, like literally like whatever, 10 meters away, that's this bottle. They're like I've never seen like even in Scotch. Okay, sometimes you get like Scotch distilleries being like, okay, well here's this farm, here's this farm, here's this farm, but I've never seen them beat down to like this level that shochu has.
Do they taste different?
Interesting question. I think that typically what they're going to do is they're going to put a little bit of different accent on that, not necessarily have the only lever be the origin of the, say, potatoes, sweet potatoes. They're also going to put a little bit of different koji or something in there.
Okay.
Just to make it a little bit different from the other one, yeah.
Okay. So like maybe the potatoes do taste a little different, but to highlight the difference or something, they'll do a little other different thing.
There's an accent, yeah.
Yeah. You are a judge of shochu, right?
Sure. Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition, yes.
How'd you get into that?
Well, so originally, I mean, I started my website, like I mentioned, 2016, and basically started to talk to the Tokyo Whiskey Research Center, probably around 2020 or so. And then I think that at the time they kind of wanted to introduce, because back when the Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition started, they did not have a shochu or awamori division at all. The first year was only kind of Western spirits, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so they wanted to introduce a shochu and awamori division. And so I think as a part of that, they kind of wanted maybe a little bit of a non-Japanese voice into that. And so I think that because of my involvement with them, I had worked with them a little bit for that. So they reached out to me and said, do you want to be a judge for, the competition? But they didn't just ask me if I wanted to be a judge. They asked me if I wanted to be on the executive committee.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I'm on the executive committee. And as part of that, they asked me to also invite some more judges as well. So I don't know if you know Stephen Lyman.
Yep.
Or Chris Pellegrini. So yeah, so basically these guys are judges on the Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition because I had sought them out as kind of experts in, say, shochu at the time, right?
Yeah.
Because realistically, those guys have probably forgotten more about shochu than I have ever known. So yeah, no, I sought them out as kind of, judges to be on the competition. And so that's kind of where I think that we originally started.
How do you, like you've been saying, there's so many different varieties and different ways to make something that you can call honkaku shochu. How do you judge it?
In terms of judging, officially as a competition, we're only allowed to judge spirits based on their straight profile, which is to say, okay, yeah, we can maybe add a little water, but we cannot add ice. We can't add soda. We can't add whatever, tonic water, anything like that, right? So we're specifically supposed to judge spirits based upon their original profile as it comes out of the bottle. And so that's kind of one of the toss-ups about shochu is because realistically, you go to Kagoshima, you go to, Miyazaki, how many people are actually drinking shochu straight out of the bottle? The answer is probably zero. I mean, nobody's actually drinking it like that. So is that kind of the thing that spirits makers actually prefer us to judge their spirits, as judges for a competition? And so this is kind of a hot topic, I think, within the executive committee at the moment is, would you really put a 25% ABV spirit versus the 44% equivalent, within the same lineup? Because as far as a sort of whiskey drinker is concerned, which realistically most of us on the Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition backgrounds, realistically that's where we come from is we're starting kind of with a whiskey background. And so in that sense, is it appropriate to put a, say, 25% spirit versus a 40% spirit, head to head like that? And so I think this is something that kind of we need to still, I think, work out as a competition, because I think that some maybe judges still don't necessarily appreciate the kind of flavor profile that sort of a lower ABV beverage still presents.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's kind of like the olive oil competitions where like you're not using it in food, but you're tasting it and then imagining how it would be good in food.
Well, and this is kind of my rub. This is kind of my rub actually, because if you look at sort of the culture of shochu, would you ever actually drink it straight? The answer is probably no. I don't know if you've been to Kagoshima. I don't know if you've been to Miyazaki. Realistically, you order a bottle for the table, and then there's ice, and then there's soda, or say, at least like hot water, something like that. And so there's always this kind of different kind of aspect that you add to it. And so, we are judging it as it is, straight from the bottle. But I think going forward, I'm not necessarily entirely sure that that's the right approach to it, because that's realistically not how it's actually consumed.
Would there be a place, maybe not at the Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition, maybe not there, but for like a soda category and a water category and like an Oyu hot water category?
So, Frank, this is one of the things that I actually really stress. And so, actually, this year at the awards ceremony in August, there is going to be a cocktail corner where the award-winning bottles of shochu, you can take it over to the counter and have oyuwari, or you can have soda, or you can have just on the rocks. This is to me, that's a little bit of a victory, but yeah, because I think that a lot of these shochu makers, they don't want you to drink it straight necessarily, right? I mean, yeah, sure, some of them do, but realistically, a lot of them probably don't.
How does the ranking work? Is it like this is the best bottle of this year, or is it like do you have different categories? If you could explain a little bit more about that.
Right. So what we do is we have basically a first sort of judging round. And from the first judging round, we come up with, say, no medal, or we come up with bronze, or we come up with silver, or we come up with gold. And of the golds, we take those to the second round. And from those, we have, say, superior gold. That's the other kind of round that we have. And so from the superior golds, we then go to the Niji Shinsa, which is like the tertiary judging round, which is where we kind of decide the category winners. And so category winners, if we're talking about, say, Mugi Shochu, for example, we have a category winner for 26 ABV or less. And then we also have a category winner for 26 ABV or more. So we have, individual category winners that we decide kind of from the secondary round of judging.
Interesting. Okay. And how many people make up like the judging team, or how many judges do you have?
So I think for shochu I'd have to get you the numbers, but I think we have 100 and something now for the first round.
100 judges?
Yeah, 100 something, I think, for the first round of shochu.
Wow.
And then for the secondary round, I think we have probably, I want to say 15, 20, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it's probably that. I'll have to get you the numbers later, but yeah.
Yeah, that is way more people than I was expecting. I was expecting you to say like 4.
Oh, no. And for the first round of judging, we need to have at least 9 people on any given flight of. Yeah, we need to have at least 9 people on any given flight, and that's true of Western Spirits Division and Shochu Division.
How many shochu are on a flight?
Typical flight, you're gonna leave, I don't know, 6 to 8.
Okay.
6 to 10. Yeah, 6 to 10. 10 at the most, probably. Yeah.
And then you're judging in that flight, or
no. We. I mean, the scores. We're not necessarily comparing one drink to another.
Okay.
We basically give any given bottle its own individual rating. It's not a competition per se between bottles to say, okay, this bottle is better than that one. It's more about what is this individual bottle? What's the score on that particular one?
And is there like a platonic ideal for a Mugi Shochu that it's like if it's this close, it's likely to get gold? Or
I mean, I think me personally, when I think of a Mugi Shochu, I think of something that would really kind of display its profile as being able to really bring out the character of a proper sort of barley-based shochu, which is to say that when I judge a spirit, I think about what the distillers originally had aimed for and how much did they actually accomplish that. Maybe they're trying to cover something up, and maybe they did a fantastic job of that. But at the same time, there's other spirits where, they have this fantastic, absolutely phenomenal, say, rice that they use. So to give you one example. So like one of my favorite spirits this year was basically a kome shochu. So like a rice-based, rice-based shochu. And it really struck out to me because they had absolutely done a fantastic job of bringing out the pure like rice elements of that spirit. And so I rated them very highly, and they ended up winning the rest of the category. So I think that, it's not just me. Other judges thought the exact same thing, is because they did a fantastic job of sort of accomplishing their goal that they had in mind. And so I think that from my perspective, I think of kind of what, as a distiller, what you're really trying to accomplish. And so where do you go with that? Do you actually accomplish that goal or not?
So for instance, when I want to introduce somebody to shochu, I often turn to dayame, but
All right.
dayame is not.
And that's a good start. That's a good start. Fruity, but yeah, good start.
But it's not like normal for like an emo shochu, right?
It's not.
So like, are you kind of judging? Would you like if dayame was in the competition? Are you judging dayame on its dayame-ness more than how it is to like other emo shochus? Is that kind of the idea?
If I were to taste a dayame on the competition, I would look at it and say, is this an emo shochu? And so it's not. However, at the same time, I could absolutely tell what they're aiming for when they made it. How much do they actually succeed in making that spirit? And so I could say, okay, well, yeah, absolutely, yeah, dayame is, that's a fantastic spirit, right? It's because it's accomplished what its goal is to set out.
So like it's trying to do this thing.
Right.
Has it done this thing very well, then it's going to get a high score.
Yeah, has it really done this thing that it wants to do? And yeah, I mean, realistically, you look at a lot of, sweet potato shochu, and a lot of them are like, okay, well, we're trying to do like whatever, yaki imo shochu, like they're trying to do like, guys selling a, baked potato from the back of his truck. They're obviously aiming for that, right? And how much do they accomplish that? Some of them have accomplished it 90%, 95%. Some of them, I don't know, 70%, something like that. So that's kind of the thing that we look for, is that, how much of your specific goal have you really accomplished?
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the picture. I feel like how many shochu categories in the competition are there?
Ooh, yeah. So we don't break it down by koji type, but we do break it down by base ingredients. So we have kome, imo, we've got mugi, and then we have soba and sonota, and then we also have aomori. But within those, we also have subcategories for 25% ABV or less for each of them.
Okay, so it's
Which is to say, altogether, I think we've got probably 10.
and awamori is treated as its own separate.
It is, yeah. Aomori, that's a different beast.
Like we were saying with the shochu creators of being, some of them are super local, not super concerned with expansion, just kind of doing their thing for their local community. Would you say that's true of awamori too, or is that like culturally, is that a little bit different, or like market wise, industry wise, a little bit different?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that aomori, a lot of aomori makers are, keen on expansion in the same sense that shochu makers are. Aomori tends to be a little bit more hyper-local in that, if you look at shochu as a whole, 99% of shochu is consumed within Japan. But within that, 99% of awamori is also consumed within Okinawa. So it's like, it's even more of a hyper-local version of, shochu within that. So I think that awamori makers probably aren't necessarily terribly concerned about, foreign exports, provided that their existing market is sustainable.
So it's, can we serve everybody in Okinawa who wants our stuff? Then
Right.
can we serve the Japanese
Yeah.
people outside of Okinawa who want our
Exactly.
stuff? Then do we want to sell overseas? I see.
Right.
Do people see the competition as a way to promote overseas, or is it mostly domestic focused?
Well, that's kind of one of the things that we're kind of looking at, is that I think that overseas promotion of the competition results is probably not where it should have been. Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition compared to, say, San Francisco World Spirits Competition. It's not where it should be. Obviously, you guys are from a sake background. You've got, all kinds of different sake competitions, but spirits wise, ISC, there's all kinds of different competitions, which I think they probably have a much higher weight than, say, Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits Competition for now. I hope that could change in the future, but yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something we need to change.
Because shochu, there is no other, there's no competitions outside of Japan that include shochu as a category, right?
SFWC does have a shochu category.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Are there places outside Japan that make shochu?
Yeah, there's a few distilleries. I think there's one in, Hawaii? There's New York. I think there's a couple.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Who do they have judge it? Do you just go?
No, it's not me. No, I definitely don't go. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. And I mean, on the other hand, in some senses, I would actually prefer somebody that doesn't know anything about shochu to judge these as spirits. Because realistically, the reason that these makers enter their spirits into the competition is so that they can market their products to overseas customers, right? They would kind of prefer that people that don't know anything about shochu judge their spirits, in sort of the context of a brandy or a tequila or, something like that. I think that they would kind of prefer that they have kind of no background about it. And then they turn around and say that, oh, actually, that's, a wonderful spirit. I think that trying to market your products to people from overseas, you really, realistically, are going to have to start from scratch on a lot of the consumers.
As part of the competition, do you provide notes on what the judges?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
yeah.
really? Okay.
Tasting notes, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And the distillers are pretty excited or happy to get those?
Yeah, and that's one of the things about the Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits Competition is that we always provide tasting. Every judge provides tasting notes, no matter what you're judging,
Oh, wow.
or no matter what you thought about it. Yeah, you're going to provide tasting notes.
And so they'll get a variety of opinions on what they sent in. And...
Yeah, they're going to get at least 9 people's different opinions on it.
Okay, that's cool. That's got to be nice. Or that's got to feel very useful.
Yeah, I mean, as a distillery, I think that's kind of a positive. Is that as a competition, we like to kind of bill ourselves as experts. I'm not sure I necessarily fall into that category, but in any case, we have, a lot of professional bartenders. We've got other distillers, distributors, wholesalers. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are very, very used to, drinking a wide variety of drinks. And so I think that in that sense, that's kind of where that we pull most of our judges from. And so as a result of that, I think that they're going to have a very wide variety of opinions about, their specific spirit.
I would imagine so. When you're just drinking shochu for fun, or when you're exploring a bottle that you recently bought or something like that, are you more likely to go something simple, or you're more likely to go for a fancy cocktail kind of thing?
Well, so shochu cocktails aren't really a thing yet. This is kind of one of my complaints about the category, is that I wish they were more of a thing. Shochu cocktails, yeah, I mean, you get a hopi or something, right? But otherwise, typically, it's not really a cocktail. So when it comes to shochu, if I get a bottle, yeah, I'm gonna probably drink it on the rocks, I think, to start. Obviously, if I had it in a competition or something, yeah, I'll have it straight. But in any case, when it comes to me personally, yeah, I'm gonna have it probably start with ice.
Gotcha. There are some places that do shochu cocktails, right?
Not many, but yeah. Naguma-san?
I think he's been on the show once.
Okay, all right.
I don't remember what episode, but yeah.
All right, yeah. Naguma-san is kind of one of the more foremost, probably Japanese bartenders that's actually interested in doing shochu cocktails.
Mm-hmm. Maybe as a closing question, how would you, let's say I've got a friend, he's come to Japan, he wants to drink Japanese whiskey, but I want to get him into other stuff too while he's here. I don't want to just go to Western bars every evening.
Sure.
How would you recommend, or what kind of shochus would you recommend for somebody who's really used to drinking whiskey and other spirits?
Well, my suggestion there would be, don't start with whiskey. My suggestion there would be to start with, say, a shochu first. Because once you drink whiskey, you're going to have something cask aged. You're going to have something that's pretty deep in flavor. And so probably before that, you should probably do a shochu. And so a lot of people that start with whiskey, look, I mean, whiskey starts with barley. And so in that sense, barley shochu is the place that a lot of people start. But also, say for a rum drinker, for example, you could start with, say, Kokuto shochu, which is like sort of a brown sugar-ish product. But you could start there. But my suggestion would be to, you don't graduate from a barrel-aged spirit to a non-barrel-aged spirit. Typically, the order is going to be the opposite. You're going to start with a non-barrel-aged one and then go to a barrel-aged one after that. So my suggestion for you on a night out, make sure that's his first drink.
Okay.
Yeah.
So start with the shochu and
start with the shochu. If necessary, order them both at the same time and just say, look, this is a shochu. Here's a barley shochu. This is what it's all about. And here's a, say, Japanese whiskey. By the way, this one is 5 times the price of that one. You could start there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. How many distilleries are there?
Yeah, last count, I'd have to look at the numbers, but there's over 120 in Kagoshima alone, which is to say that that's almost all of what Scotland has for Scotch distilleries.
Oh, I did not. Oh, what? Wait.
Yeah, so Kagoshima itself has, I think, I have to look at the numbers, but I think Kagoshima itself has probably more shochu distilleries than Scotland does have whiskey distilleries in total.
And that just means that the Kagoshima distilleries are making far less?
Yeah, they're tiny. They're tiny, man. I mean, if you're talking about licensing in distillation in Japan, National Tax Agency, you need 7,000 liters? That's nothing compared to...
Is that nothing?
That's nothing. 7,000 liters a year? That's nothing. Yeah.
Okay. Because, I think to myself, 7,000 liters, 7,000, that's more than 7,000 bottles if we're doing 720 milliliter bottles. That's a lot of bottles to sell, in my mind.
If you're running a distillery, though, that's nothing.
Yeah. And
there's even exceptions for that. Like if you're running a branded distillery, for example, you don't even have to hit that number because you're making wine.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's, I think, a lot of exceptions to that. And realistically, the National Tax Agency isn't even issuing new licenses to shochu distilleries because it's a declining industry.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, they're not even doing it very proactively at all these days. You have to have a really, really good business case to get a new license for a shochu distillery these days.
Yeah. Are there people coming into the industry, or is it pretty difficult future-wise?
Not really. No, I think not really. It's kind of look, I mean, it blew up in the 80s, and I think that we don't really see a lot of new entrants since then.
Interesting. But, some distillers also make Western spirits.
Yeah, and, realistically, you can get a grant from the Japanese government. Like, if you're a shochu distiller, you could say, okay, yeah, we want to make Japanese gin, we want to make Japanese whiskey. You can get a grant from the government for 70,000, 100K US, but
really,
that's kind of where a lot of people get off. I think a lot of, say, smaller distillers see that as kind of like saving grace for them, is that they can move into a new category.
Do they stop producing shochu, or is it they're now doing shochu and a new category?
No, I mean, look at. I mean, half of Japanese gin, it's shochu based. I mean, you start with the base spirit. You start the exact same base spirit, shochu, and then you distill the hell out of it in your continuous still, and then you've got a neutral. Neutral is what they call it. It's not neutral. I'm sorry. It's koji based. It's not neutral.
Okay.
But they call it neutral. But in any case, that's where you start with a neutral spirit, and then you add some botanicals to it, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here's your Japanese gin. So realistically, even in Tokyo Whiskey and Spirits competition, we've actually made, within Japanese gin, we've made a different category for shochu-based gin versus non-shochu, versus actual non-neutral-based spirit gin. Because it's two way different things.
Really?
Because, look, I mean, you could distill the hell out of it, but I'm sorry, shochu still tastes like a koji-based spirit, realistically. And so that's kind of the distinction that we've made in the competition is that neutral, pure actual, NGS, like let's say like London Dry Gin definition, neutral grain spirit is completely different from say a shochu based spirit, because shochu based spirit ultimately, it uses koji, which changes the flavor profile so much that it's not exactly neutral anymore.
Oh, I did not know that. So
I mean, that's not to say that all the Japanese gin that uses shochu is bad. It's just that it changes the base profile, because like I look at gin, I want to start with a blank slate. I want to start with like a white piece of paper upon which I can build my flavor profile, right? Versus when we start with a say koji based spirit, it's like off white. It kind of changes the profile slightly.
can you describe that flavor, like the flavor? Like if you were gonna show off, right, and be like, you got 6 unmarked gins, and you're like, this one's koji, this one's not, this one's koji, this one's not. Like, what would that difference be?
It's got this kind of depth to it. It's got this kind of, I don't know, almost like sweatiness to it.
Okay. Like a truffly sweatiness?
It's almost like a truffly sweatiness. Yeah.
It's like the nice aspects of the sweatiness kind of thing.
Yeah, it's obviously I don't want obvious sweatiness, but it's got this kind of, it adds this dimension to it, which you would not find in say a standard say spirit, right? Like in a gin. And it adds this thing that I'm not quite sure if I'm looking for that or not. In some cases, I mean, yeah, absolutely, it can absolutely add a great dimension to a drink. But on the other cases, it's like, is that really what I want? I'm not quite sure.
Mm-hmm. Is that the same with the like koji based whiskey too? Does it have that same like kojiness to it, or is it a little bit different?
Very interesting question, because I've had a lot of koji based whiskey, and if you put it in front of me and like blind tasting and said, is this a koji based whiskey? Is this a standard whiskey? I don't know. I honestly don't know if I can get that right or not. The koji whiskey that I've had so far, yeah, I could probably tell the difference. But I think that going forward, that might not be the case. There's going to be a lot more, say, cask influence. There's going to be a lot more, say, underlying, I don't know, barley influence that could probably take that in a very different direction than, say, the koji has. Because I think that a lot of the koji whiskey we've had up until now, they call it koji whiskey because you can still feel the koji in it, right? And I think that going forward, is koji something that people are going to be looking for in whiskey? I'm still not quite sure. Because, I mean, look, if you look at, U.S. regulations and stuff, it tastes like a whiskey, so yeah, therefore it is a whiskey, right? You could still call it Japanese whiskey if you want to. But on the other hand, like, I taste it, and it's like, this still tastes to me like there's some koji influence to it. But I think that given another 5-10 years, that's probably not going to be the case. I think that maybe 5 to 10 years, I'll probably have a koji whiskey, and I'll be like, you know what, that's fantastic.
So it's maybe the figuring out how the koji flavor essence works with like the whiskey.
Exactly, profile. And I think that a lot of probably the makers of say these koji whiskeys haven't quite figured out yet exactly how to incorporate that flavor profile into the ultimate profile of the whiskey yet.
Interesting, because what would theoretically come naturally in shochu, because shochu is what they know.
But, and I mean, honestly, like, if you think about it, that could be something that really changes whiskey as a category as a whole, right? It's that you introduce this in complete different dimension. Umami, has that ever existed in whiskey? No, it really hasn't. You're introducing this complete other dimension of flavor into the whiskey, and so that could be a thing. One of the interesting aspects of the Japanese whiskey regulations that were newly passed in I say regulations, I'm sorry. I should say rules. And, they just say that it has to be aged in wood.
Okay.
Which is to say, you could store your whiskey in an soy sauce cask, right?
Yeah.
That would introduce a whole other dimension of, say, umami, right? And realistically, I mean, there's hinoki. Like if you look at sake, right? You guys obviously know hinoki. So yeah, I mean, there's sugi. So there's all these kinds of different woods that you can use. And I think that, Japanese whiskey has the potential to go down this different road versus, say, a bourbon or an Irish or a Scotch.
Yeah. Shochu also is pretty umami-y in general, right?
Right, because of the koji. Yeah, because of the koji, right?
Do you think that there's a move away from umami-style shochu, or not so much?
Not at all. No. I completely disagree with that. I mean, I think that realistically, anybody under 40 would probably prefer to have, like, strong umami. Sanmi, not so much. But umami, yeah, definitely.
Okay, interesting.
We don't really get so much sanmi in shochu because it doesn't really stick around. After distillation, it kind of disappears. For like the acidity, it kind of disappears after the distillation. But in terms of umami, I think that nobody's opposed to that.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, because with sake, right, I think acidity and umami together are big.
I mean, that's kind of the two dimensions of sake for a lot of people, right? Is that, it's the acidity and the umami. But in the case of shochu, acidity isn't really a thing that a lot of people think about. It's more about sort of how much of that base ingredients are you getting, plus sort of the umami on top of that.
That makes a lot of sense. We're way over time now. Sorry. Do you have anything you didn't get a chance to say, or anything you'd like to share?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liam. Yeah, so before we close, would you like to share where people can find you, or?
Absolutely. So my website is called nominication.jp. So I primarily write about Japanese spirits, specifically starting with Japanese whiskey, Japanese gin, shochu as well. So yeah, looking forward to having you guys over.
Great. Thank you so much, Liam.
Fine. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you. That was great. Oh man, that's so interesting. I learned a lot. It's great.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
Have a good one.
All right. Appreciate it. You
Bye.
too.
And that will do it for this episode of Sake on Air. Please take a moment to review and rate us on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you may be enjoying the show on. And feel free to send your questions and comments to questions@sakeonair.com, or you can actually message us at sakeonair on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. You can also find us on our YouTube channel as well. We'll be back with more Sake on Air very soon. But until then, kampai! Sake on Air is made possible with the generous support of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association, and is broadcast from the Japan Sake and Shochu Information Center in downtown Tokyo. It is produced by Export Japan, and our team is Shuso Imada, Justin Potts, Arlene Lyons, Cindy Bissig, Chris Hughes, Chris Pellegrini, John Gottner, Marie Nagata, Miho Ota, Rebecca Wilson-Lai, Sebastian Luan, and me, Frank Walter. Until next time, kampai!